Imagine standing before a mirror. At first glance, you see a familiar face staring back. Your own. But look deeper, and the reflection seems endless. Behind you is another mirror, and then another, and suddenly your image stretches into infinity. Each reflection is slightly different, slightly distorted, yet undeniably connected. What if this simple illusion is not just a trick of optics, but a metaphor for something far more profound? What if the very structure of reality is a hall of mirrors, and the observer, you, are not standing outside of it but within it, shaping what is seen? For centuries, human beings have gazed into the night sky and wondered if other universes might exist, parallel to our own. Entire galaxies of speculation have been built upon this question. Physicists today speak openly of multiverses, cosmic expansions where countless realities unfold, unseen but perhaps real. Yet what if we have been looking in the wrong direction? What if the key to understanding parallel universes does not lie in distant galaxies or inaccessible dimensions, but in the uncharted terrain of consciousness itself? This is where the mystery sharpens. We are accustomed to thinking of the universe as out there, an external arena where matter, energy, and the laws of physics play out. Consciousness, in contrast, is thought of as in here, locked behind our eyes, confined to the private theater of the mind. But what if this boundary between inner and outer is not so clear? What if consciousness is not merely a passive witness to reality, but an active participant in its unfolding? A mirror that does more than reflect, a mirror that generates. The question unsettles us because it forces a confrontation with the deepest assumptions of science. Modern physics is built upon the notion that reality exists independently of us. Stars burn, galaxies spin, particles collide whether or not any mind is present to witness them. Yet quantum mechanics, the most precise and successful scientific framework ever created, casts a long shadow of doubt over this assumption. In the subatomic world, particles do not seem to exist as definite objects until they are measured. Possibilities float in a haze of probabilities, collapsing into reality only when observed. And this is where the hook lodges. If the act of observation is fundamental to reality itself, then who or what is the observer? Is it any measuring device, as some interpretations suggest? Or is it, at the deepest level, consciousness? The unsettling possibility is that your awareness is not just riding along on a pre-written script of the cosmos. Your awareness may be woven into the script itself. Here we meet a tension that will run through this entire exploration. The tension between what science demands and what speculation dares. On one side, the physicist armed with equations insists that multiverses, if they exist, belong to the fabric of external spacetime. On the other, the philosopher and mystic whisper that the infinite may already live within us, that each mind may be its own branching cosmos, its own mirror of worlds. The idea that consciousness might contain universes sounds almost absurd when judged against the hard edge of scientific skepticism. And yet, consider how much mystery remains even in the everyday phenomenon of awareness. Neuroscience has mapped neural pathways, measured brain activity, and correlated patterns of firing with thoughts and perceptions. But no scientist can explain why any of it feels like something. No theory has cracked the enigma of subjective experience, the raw presence of being alive. Consciousness is still a frontier, and in every frontier, there is room for horizons we cannot yet imagine. To set the emotional stage, imagine the brain itself. 86 billion neurons firing in intricate constellations, a galaxy contained within the skull. Each neural spark a star, each synapse a connection spanning cosmic distance. If we look at a brain scan long enough, we cannot help but notice its resemblance to a map of the universe. Could this be coincidence? Or could it be a reflection of a deeper symmetry? The microcosm echoing the macrocosm, the inner world mirroring the outer? This metaphor is not new. Ancient traditions from Hinduism to Hermeticism, from the Upanishads to the writings of Plato, have long suggested that the human mind reflects the cosmos. As above, so below. But what was once dismissed as mystical poetry now finds strange resonance with modern physics. Quantum mechanics does not say outright that universes exist within consciousness, but it does raise questions about the entanglement between observer and observed, questions that cannot be so easily swept aside. And here lies the first great contrast. On one hand, we have intuition, myth, and subjective experience telling us that consciousness is vast, mysterious, perhaps infinite. On the other hand, we have scientific caution warning that such notions may be projections of the human imagination, comforting illusions without evidence. Between these poles lies the fertile ground of inquiry. And it is into this ground that we now step, aware that every answer will open new questions, and every explanation will reveal new mysteries. Let us pause on the image of the mirror once more. In a hall of mirrors, you cannot tell which reflection is real and which is an illusion. Each image is both true and false at once, each dependent on your position, your angle of gaze. Is reality itself like this? Could the universe be less like a machine and more like a kaleidoscope, where perspective itself generates the pattern we see? This is not just a poetic flourish. It is a scientific and philosophical challenge. If the multiverse exists, then infinite versions of you are out there, making different choices, living different lives. But if the multiverse is also within consciousness, then infinite versions of you are already here, playing out in the labyrinth of thought, memory, and imagination. The physics of parallel worlds and the psychology of parallel selves may be two faces of the same mirror. The stakes of this question reach beyond curiosity. If consciousness is indeed woven into the fabric of reality, then our understanding of who we are and what the universe is must change. No longer can we see ourselves as isolated minds adrift in a vast, indifferent cosmos. Instead, we may be participants in the very unfolding of worlds, co-creators in a cosmic dance we barely comprehend. Yet the mystery cuts both ways. For if we do participate in reality, then what responsibility do we bear for it? Are we merely shaping the illusions of our private minds, or are we entangled with universes themselves? Do our choices ripple outward into the fabric of existence, or only inward into the dreamscapes of thought? These questions hover, unresolved, inviting us deeper. And so, as the mirrors stretch into infinity, as the neurons fire like distant stars, and as the quantum haze waits to be observed, we arrive at the threshold of our journey. The hook has been set, the mystery unveiled. Do parallel universes exist inside your consciousness? Or does your consciousness exist inside them? To answer, or at least to pursue the answer, we must begin with the foundations, by asking not just what consciousness is, but how it has come to be entangled with the deepest riddles of physics. Consciousness is at once the most familiar and the most alien phenomenon we encounter. It is the ground of every experience, the light in which every thought, memory, and perception appears. And yet, when we ask the simplest of questions, what is it? We find ourselves in uncharted territory. To define consciousness is like trying to stare directly at your own eyes without a mirror. We know it intimately, and yet it forever eludes capture. Science has mapped the brain in exquisite detail. We know its architecture. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, electrical currents sparking across synaptic gaps like silent lightning. With modern imaging, we can watch regions of the brain activate when someone speaks, remembers, or dreams. Yet none of this explains the essence of experience itself, the feeling of being alive, the mysterious presence that philosophers call qualia. How does a lump of biological matter generate the glow of awareness? Here we encounter what philosophers of mind call the hard problem. The easy problems of consciousness are the mechanical ones: how neurons communicate, how information is processed, how signals translate into behavior. But the hard problem is deeper. Why does all this processing feel like something from the inside? Why is there an inner movie at all, rather than just complex but unconscious machinery? Materialists argue that consciousness is nothing more than brain activity. Like heat emerging from the motion of atoms, consciousness emerges from the firing of neurons. It is, in this view, a kind of illusion real enough to us but reducible to underlying physics and biology. If this is true, then consciousness is not a fundamental part of the universe, but a latecomer. An evolutionary adaptation useful for survival but ultimately no more mysterious than digestion or respiration. And yet, this account feels incomplete. If consciousness is merely an illusion, to whom is the illusion appearing? If the subjective world we inhabit every waking moment is just a trick of neurons, then the most immediate reality we know is somehow the least real. Here lies a paradox that has troubled thinkers from Descartes to modern neuroscientists. Consciousness cannot be dismissed, because it is the very medium through which we encounter all other truths. It is here that physics re-enters the stage, and with it, a question as profound as any in science. Does consciousness play a role in the unfolding of reality itself? Quantum mechanics, the strange and powerful theory that governs the microscopic world, offers no easy answers. It tells us that particles like electrons or photons do not exist in definite states until they are measured. Before observation, they inhabit a realm of possibilities, superpositions, where they are many things at once. Here and there, waves and particles, real and unreal. Only when an observation occurs does this haze of probabilities collapse into a single outcome. The unsettling implication is that reality itself seems incomplete without an active measurement. But what counts as measurement? Is it enough for a particle to interact with a detector, triggering a signal? Or does the collapse only truly occur when a conscious mind becomes aware of the result? This is the heart of the observer problem, a problem that has haunted physics for nearly a century. The Copenhagen interpretation, pioneered by Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, proposed that quantum systems exist in superpositions until observed, and that observation causes the collapse into a definite state. But Copenhagen never fully resolved what an observer is. Is it any physical interaction? Or is the conscious mind the final ingredient? Einstein, troubled by this ambiguity, famously quipped, "Do you really believe the moon isn't there if you aren't looking at it?" Against Copenhagen stands objective realism, the belief that reality exists independently of observation. According to this view, the moon is always there, whether or not anyone is watching. Quantum systems, in this interpretation, may appear to collapse upon observation, but in truth they evolve deterministically according to hidden variables or alternate explanations we have not yet discovered. For the realists, consciousness has no privileged place in physics. It is a passenger, not a driver. But the story is not so easily settled. Experiments such as the double-slit experiment continue to defy simple explanation. When particles are sent through two slits, they create an interference pattern as though they traveled both paths at once. Yet when we observe which path they take, the interference disappears, and the particle behaves as though it chose only one slit. Somehow, the very act of measurement changes what is real. This forces us to confront a haunting possibility, that consciousness is not a latecomer to the universe but a participant woven into its very fabric. If so, then the frontier of physics is not just out there in the stars and particles, but in here in the depths of awareness. Consciousness may not be a byproduct of the brain, but something more fundamental, a lens through which reality crystallizes into being. Such a view has echoes in philosophy. Idealists have long argued that mind, not matter, is the primary substance of existence. The physical world, they claim, is a projection or manifestation of consciousness, not the other way around. Even some modern theories, such as panpsychism, suggest that consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present in some form in all matter. This does not mean that rocks have thoughts or feelings, but that the basic ingredients of experience may be woven into the fabric of reality itself, just as mass and energy are. Skeptics counter that these ideas risk straying into mysticism. Consciousness may feel irreducible, but history shows that mysteries often yield to scientific explanation. Once, life itself was seen as infused with a vital force beyond chemistry and physics. Today, we understand biology as the intricate interplay of molecules. Perhaps consciousness, too, will one day be explained in terms of information processing, emergent complexity, and physical law. And yet, quantum mechanics keeps the door ajar for a deeper mystery. It refuses to let us easily separate the observer from the observed. It suggests, at the very least, that reality is relational, that what we call facts depend on the act of measurement. Whether or not consciousness is essential, the boundary between mind and world is less clear than classical science once imagined. Here we find ourselves at a crossroads. Is consciousness merely the flickering of neurons, destined to be explained away by neuroscience? Or is it the hidden key to physics, the missing link that binds probabilities into the actuality we call reality. This tension between reduction and participation, between brain and cosmos, defines the frontier we are now entering. For if consciousness is more than an evolutionary accident, if it is indeed entangled with the deepest laws of physics, then our search for truth cannot remain confined to the external world alone. We must also explore the inner dimensions of awareness. As we move forward, we will step deeper into the puzzles that quantum mechanics has laid before us. We will see how the act of measurement, the collapse of possibility into actuality, and the mystery of the observer converge into one of the most profound riddles in all of science. And so the question stands open and unresolved. Is consciousness the greatest illusion the brain has ever produced, or is it the mirror through which universes themselves come into being? At the heart of modern physics lies a puzzle so strange, so unsettling, that even the greatest scientific minds have wrestled with it in frustration. It is the quantum measurement problem, the question of how and why the fuzzy haze of probabilities in the quantum world solidifies into the definite reality we experience. To glimpse the problem, we must begin small, smaller than atoms, smaller than the particles that make up atoms. At this level, reality behaves in ways that defy common sense. Particles do not exist in one state or another, but in a ghostly overlap of possibilities. A single electron can be here and there at once. A photon can behave like a particle and a wave simultaneously. This state of multiplicity is called superposition, and it is one of the most mind-bending features of quantum mechanics. Superposition, however, comes with a catch. It collapses when measured. The act of observation seems to force a system to choose a definite outcome. Before observation, we are faced with probabilities. After observation, we are left with a fact. But what exactly counts as an observation? And why does it cause the collapse? This is the enigma that has haunted physics since the early 20th century. The most famous illustration of this riddle is Schrödinger's cat. Imagine, as Erwin Schrödinger asked us to do, a cat placed in a sealed box with a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, and a vial of poison. If the atom decays, the Geiger counter triggers, the vial shatters, and the cat dies. If the atom does not decay, the cat lives. According to quantum theory, until we open the box, the atom exists in a superposition of decayed and not decayed, which means, disturbingly, the cat is both dead and alive at the same time, at least until observed. Only when we look does the cat snap into one reality or the other. This thought experiment was not meant to suggest that cats actually hover between life and death, but to highlight the absurdity of applying quantum principles to the everyday world. Yet, experiments with photons, electrons, and even large molecules have confirmed that superposition is not just a mathematical trick. It is real. Nature itself seems to dwell in multiple possibilities until something forces a decision. The double-slit experiment adds another layer of strangeness. When particles are fired at a screen with two slits, they form an interference pattern, as though each particle passes through both slits at once and interferes with itself like a wave. But when we place detectors to see which slit each particle actually goes through, the interference vanishes. The particle behaves as if it went through only one slit. Somehow, the act of observation changes the outcome. The universe behaves differently depending on whether or not it is being watched. Faced with this mystery, physicists have developed interpretations, different philosophical frameworks to explain what is happening. The Copenhagen interpretation argues that quantum systems remain in superposition until measured, and that measurement causes the collapse into a single outcome. But this view leaves us with uncomfortable vagueness. What exactly constitutes a measurement? Is it the detector itself? The interaction with the environment? Or is it only when a conscious observer becomes aware of the result? Other interpretations attempt to sidestep this problem. The many-worlds interpretation proposes that there is no collapse at all. Instead, every possible outcome happens but in different branches of reality. When you observe the particle, you see one result, while another version of you in another universe sees the opposite. Reality continually splits, spawning endless parallel worlds. Here, consciousness does not collapse probabilities. It merely rides along one branch of an ever-diverging multiverse. Another approach, called decoherence, explains collapse in terms of entanglement with the environment. When a quantum system interacts with countless surrounding particles, air molecules, photons, vibrations, it becomes impossible to track all the overlapping possibilities. The superposition effectively leaks into the environment, leaving behind what looks like a definite outcome. Decoherence provides a powerful explanation for why quantum weirdness seems to disappear at the macroscopic scale. But still, it does not answer the deepest question. Why do we perceive a single reality rather than the entire cloud of possibilities? At the center of this debate hovers the possibility that consciousness itself is the missing ingredient. Could it be that awareness is what collapses the wave function? That reality remains a haze of probabilities until a conscious mind encounters it? This notion, though controversial, has been championed by figures such as John von Neumann and Eugene Wigner, who argued that the chain of measurement cannot end until it reaches consciousness. In their view, consciousness is not an illusion at all. It is the ultimate player in the game of physics. Skeptics dismiss this idea as mysticism. They argue that consciousness is not needed to explain quantum phenomena, and that physics must remain a science of the external world, not of subjective experience. To them, invoking consciousness risks slipping from science into philosophy, from testable theories into speculation. Yet even as they resist, the question refuses to vanish. For if consciousness is entirely irrelevant, then why does reality appear to wait for measurement to decide its state? The quantum measurement problem reveals a deep fracture in our understanding of reality. On one side is the scientific demand for objectivity, for a world that exists independently of us. On the other side is the undeniable role of observation, a role that cannot easily be erased from the equations. Between these poles lies a tension that shapes not only physics, but our very sense of existence. Think again of Schrödinger's cat. If the cat is both alive and dead until observed, then what is real before the box is opened? Is reality simply undefined, suspended between outcomes? Or does it exist fully in multiple states, branching into parallel universes the moment the box is opened? Or perhaps reality does not settle at all until a conscious mind beholds it. Each answer carries staggering implications. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then every decision you make is mirrored by another you in another universe. Every path taken generates countless paths not taken. Your life, then, is not singular but one of infinite variations. If decoherence holds the key, then reality does not split, but simply hides its multiplicities in the tangled fabric of the environment, invisible to you but real nonetheless. If consciousness is the decisive factor, then reality itself may be incomplete without mind, that your awareness is not just a passive witness but the very catalyst of existence. The quantum measurement problem does more than challenge physics. It challenges the way we define reality itself. Is reality something that exists independently, waiting for us to discover it? Or is it something that crystallizes through our participation, inseparable from the act of observation? Science demands answers, but the deeper we probe, the more elusive the solution becomes. And perhaps this is the most haunting truth. We do not yet know what is real. We live in a world where particles can exist in multiple places at once, where observation alters outcomes, where cats can be alive and dead until we look. Our everyday certainty is built on foundations that dissolve the moment we examine them too closely. Yet mystery is not the same as ignorance. The measurement problem may remain unsolved, but it serves as a portal, a reminder that the universe is stranger than we dare to imagine, and that consciousness may not stand apart from the cosmos but within it, entangled in its deepest workings. So we arrive at a cliffhanger. If reality needs an observer to become definite, then who or what is that observer? Is it the detector, the environment, the brain, or consciousness itself? And if it is consciousness, then are we not forced to entertain an even bolder possibility, that parallel universes might not only exist out there in the cosmos, but within the very fabric of our awareness? The answer may lie in the interpretations yet to come, in theories not yet written, or perhaps in a shift of perspective so profound that it redefines both physics and mind. For now, the question lingers, unsatisfied. Does consciousness generate universes, or do universes generate consciousness? And with this unresolved riddle, we turn to the next chapter of our journey, where the battle between many worlds and mind worlds will take center stage, and where the debate over parallel universes will move from the realm of particles to the vast theater of existence itself. Imagine, for a moment, that every choice you have ever made still exists, not just in memory but in reality. The decision to say yes instead of no. The road you walked instead of the one you avoided. The silence you kept instead of the words you spoke. What if every one of these possibilities unfolded into an actual universe, as real as the one you inhabit now? This is the daring promise of the many worlds interpretation, that reality does not collapse into one path, but branches infinitely into all possible paths. The many worlds interpretation, proposed by Hugh Everett in the 1950s, was not born from mysticism but from mathematics. Everett sought to solve the quantum measurement problem without invoking wave function collapse. His solution was radical. The wave function never collapses. Instead, every possible outcome of a quantum event becomes real, each in its own branch of the universe. When you observe an electron, you do not collapse its possibilities, you split. One version of you sees the electron here, another sees it there. Both are equally real. Both continue forward in their respective worlds, never to meet again. This vision of reality is breathtaking in scope. It suggests a cosmos teeming with unimaginable diversity, a multiverse where every possibility is actualized. There is a universe where you became a painter instead of an engineer, where civilizations rose and fell in entirely different ways, where history forked at every decision point into uncountable timelines. To many physicists, Everett's idea solves the quantum riddle elegantly. No collapse, no privileged observer, just relentless branching. And yet, the many worlds interpretation comes with a price. If all outcomes are realized, then what meaning do our choices truly hold? Are we unique individuals making decisions, or merely passengers carried along one of infinite rivers of possibility? For some, the many worlds interpretation strips life of significance, turning destiny into an illusion. For others, it opens a vast and wondrous horizon, where existence itself is richer than we could ever imagine. But there is another possibility, one that shifts the theater of branching from the cosmos outside to the mind within. Call it the concept of mind worlds. Here, the infinite universes are not physical realms scattered across the multiverse but subjective landscapes generated by consciousness. Every memory, every dream, every imagined future is a world of its own, alive within the architecture of awareness. If many worlds belongs to physics, mind worlds belongs to philosophy and psychology. Consider this: when you imagine yourself choosing a different path in life, you conjure a vivid world where that choice plays out. You can see it, feel it, almost live it, even though it exists only in thought. Your mind contains branching versions of yourself, not unlike Everett's branching universes. Some are rooted in memory, what might have happened if you had spoken instead of remained silent. Others are pure imagination, what might happen if you walked out the door tomorrow and never looked back. To the brain, these scenarios are not empty abstractions. Neural activity simulates them with remarkable fidelity, lighting up the same regions that process actual experience. In a sense, your consciousness creates and explores alternate worlds every day. The parallel between many worlds and mind worlds is striking. Both suggest that reality does not collapse into a single line but expands into branching possibilities. The difference lies in where those branches exist. Are they out there in the cosmos, unfolding as physical realities? Or are they in here, within the vast landscape of thought and imagination? Science leans toward the external. Many physicists see Everett's interpretation as a legitimate solution to quantum puzzles, even if it remains unprovable. To them, the multiverse is a physical structure, independent of our minds. But philosophers, mystics, and even some neuroscientists propose a bolder twist. Perhaps the multiverse is both external and internal. Perhaps the branching of worlds and the branching of minds are two sides of the same mirror. This is where narrative tension intensifies. Are we explorers of an infinite physical cosmos, navigating realities beyond our own? Or are we explorers of consciousness, each of us carrying an infinity within, as vast as any galaxy? The answer may depend on how we define real. If reality is only what can be measured, then mind worlds are illusions. But if reality is what is experienced, then mind worlds are as undeniable as the physical universe itself. Skeptics, of course, raise objections. They argue that the many worlds interpretation is extravagantly wasteful, positing an unobservable infinity of universes to explain simple quantum outcomes. Likewise, they argue that mind worlds are nothing more than simulations, mental rehearsals with no independent existence. But what if the line between simulation and reality is thinner than we think? After all, what we call this reality is mediated entirely through perception, through neural activity, through the same machinery that generates dreams and memories. If we dismiss inner worlds as illusions, we may be dismissing the very process that gives rise to our experience of the outer world as well. The contrast between many worlds and mind worlds invites a deeper question. Must we choose between them? Could both be true? Perhaps the physical universe branches endlessly, while consciousness mirrors this branching internally, resonating with the structure of reality itself. Perhaps when we imagine alternate lives, we are not inventing them but glimpsing faint echoes of universes where those lives are real. Such speculation may seem audacious, yet it reflects an ancient intuition, that the boundary between inner and outer is porous, that the cosmos and consciousness reflect one another. As above, so below. In the language of modern physics, as in the metaphors of philosophy, the mirror continues to haunt us. If many worlds is true, then we are fragments of an infinite cosmos, each choice birthing new universes beyond our grasp. If mind worlds is true, then we are ourselves infinite, carrying within us countless realities spun from memory, imagination, and possibility. In either case, the singular self we cling to may be only one thread in a much larger tapestry. And so the question deepens: are we travelers through an external multiverse, or through an inner one? Are we physical beings caught in the branching of quantum events, or conscious beings generating infinite worlds within? Perhaps the most unsettling answer is not one or the other, but both, that reality is a hall of mirrors where inner and outer worlds cannot be cleanly separated. This tension will guide our next step, as we turn from abstract theory to the very flesh and blood of the human mind. For if mind worlds are real, then the brain itself may be the key to understanding how universes, whether external or internal, are created and explored. The neurons within our skulls may not only echo galaxies but generate worlds of their own. And with this possibility, we now move into the realm of neuroscience, where the mysteries of dreams, imagination, and altered states of consciousness reveal just how many universes may already exist inside us. Close your eyes, and the world does not vanish. Instead, another world emerges. In dreams, you walk through landscapes that feel as solid as stone, speak to people who do not exist, and live through moments that dissolve at dawn yet leave traces in memory. In hallucinations, the mind paints visions that bend reality. Under psychedelics, colors breathe, sounds take on shapes, and the boundary between self and universe dissolves. Even in waking life, imagination conjures futures that have not happened and memories that may not have happened exactly as we recall them. These are not trivial illusions. They are alternate realities, universes woven by the brain itself. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is not a passive recorder of the world but an active generator. Perception is not a window, it is a construction. Every moment of experience arises from the brain's attempt to interpret signals, filling gaps, resolving ambiguity, creating coherence. What you see, hear, and feel is not raw reality but a model of it, crafted in real time. In this sense, we are always living inside a simulation, a neural universe generated within. Consider dreams. For centuries, they were regarded as mystical messages, divine whispers, or portals to other realms. Today, neuroscience maps them to the activity of the sleeping brain, especially within networks responsible for vision, memory, and emotion. During REM sleep, the brain lights up with activity nearly as intense as waking life. The body lies still, but the mind travels through constructed worlds. These dreamscapes have rules, textures, even internal logic. In them, we experience fear, love, conflict, and joy as if they were real. From the perspective of the dreamer, they are real. Hallucinations tell a similar story. In schizophrenia, the brain can generate voices that feel indistinguishably external. Under sensory deprivation, the mind invents patterns, faces, and entire narratives to fill the silence. Psychedelics, long taboo, are now studied scientifically, revealing that substances like psilocybin and LSD temporarily disrupt normal brain connectivity, creating new pathways of communication between regions. The result is a flood of perception where inner and outer worlds merge. Those who undergo these experiences often describe them not as distortions but as revelations, glimpses of a deeper reality that everyday consciousness conceals. From the standpoint of materialist neuroscience, these are functions of brain chemistry. Dreams arise from memory processing, hallucinations from misfiring circuits, psychedelic visions from altered serotonin receptors. Reality, in this view, is singular, and the alternate worlds we experience are fabrications, useful, fascinating, but illusions nonetheless. The brain is a biological machine, and its universes are simulations, not portals. Yet the sense of reality within these states is undeniable. To the dreamer, the dream world feels solid. To the hallucinator, the voice is as real as any external sound. To the psychedelic voyager, the dissolution of self into the cosmos feels more true than waking life. Here is the tension. Science reduces these experiences to neural activity, but subjectively, they are as compelling as any external event. Are they merely fictions, or could they hint at something more, at consciousness as a gateway to hidden dimensions of being? Recent studies of the brain reveal just how complex its world-building machinery is. One network, called the default mode network, becomes active when the mind is not focused on external tasks, when we daydream, imagine, or simulate futures. This network stitches together memory, imagination, and prediction, creating alternate scenarios we can mentally test. In evolutionary terms, it is a survival tool, allowing us to prepare for possibilities before they occur. But in philosophical terms, it is astonishing. Within the skull, the brain continually simulates universes that do not exist until perhaps they do. Some neuroscientists describe this as the brain as a prediction engine. Our perceptions are guesses, refined by sensory input but always modeled from within. Others push further, suggesting that what we call reality itself may be no more than the most stable, consensual dream, a simulation we share, anchored by common inputs but still generated by our neural machinery. If so, then waking life is not the absence of illusion but the most useful one. Mystical traditions have long embraced a similar idea. Yogic and Buddhist philosophies describe consciousness as a field in which worlds arise and dissolve. Indigenous cultures speak of visions and dreamtime as encounters with parallel realms. Psychedelic explorers describe the mind as a portal, not just inventing but accessing layers of reality. Where science sees neurons firing, mysticism sees gateways opening. The brain becomes not just a machine, but a cosmic instrument, tuned to dimensions we rarely perceive. The imagery here is powerful. Picture the brain as a galaxy of neurons, each firing like a star, their connections weaving constellations of thought. Within this galaxy, countless worlds flicker into being. Dreams, memories, visions, possibilities. At one level, it is biology, electrochemical currents, proteins, synapses. At another, it is cosmology, a universe unfolding inside each skull, mirroring the vast universe outside. The line between biology and cosmos blurs. Skeptics argue that to treat inner worlds as real is to confuse metaphor with reality. Dreams do not exist outside the brain, they insist. Hallucinations are errors, not revelations. And yet, even if we accept the materialist explanation, we must reckon with a remarkable truth. The brain generates entire realities, complete with their own time, space, and logic. In doing so, it demonstrates that the capacity for multiple worlds is not speculative but proven. We live them nightly. We experience them in illness, in visions, in imagination. The multiverse exists within us, if only as experience. But what if experience itself is not secondary? What if the subjective world has ontological weight, as real in its own domain as the external world is in its own? Here, the frontier opens again. Perhaps dreams are not mere illusions but parallel streams of consciousness. Perhaps psychedelic visions reveal dimensions of mind that overlap with dimensions of cosmos. Perhaps memory is not just recall but resonance with other versions of ourselves, lived in worlds adjacent to this one. In this view, the brain is both a machine and a gateway. As a machine, it processes information, generates predictions, constructs models. As a gateway, it channels consciousness into multiple realities, some internal, some external, all interconnected. It is like a radio, both generating signals and tuning into frequencies that exist beyond it. Whether those frequencies are metaphors or literal dimensions remains a mystery, but the metaphor itself reveals the awe of the human condition. The neuroscience of inner universes thus becomes a bridge between two truths. On one side, the scientific neurons, chemistry, prediction engines, illusions. On the other, the experiential dreams, visions, revelations, worlds as real to the mind as the ground beneath our feet. The contrast is sharp, but it is in the tension that mystery thrives. So we return to the question: are the universes within us merely fictions of a biological machine, or are they glimpses into the deeper fabric of reality? The answer remains unsettled, poised between skepticism and wonder. What is certain is that the brain demonstrates the possibility of multiplicity, that a single consciousness can contain worlds. And from here, our journey turns backward in time, to a deeper layer of human experience. For before neuroscience, before physics, before modern science itself, humanity turned to myth to explain the multiverse. Ancient cultures told stories of hidden realms, of parallel worlds, of consciousness traveling beyond the ordinary. Perhaps in those myths lies not only poetry, but a reflection of truth science is only now beginning to approach. Long before laboratories, particle accelerators, and equations scribbled on chalkboards, humanity dreamed of other worlds. Our ancestors looked at the night sky and saw not emptiness, but doorways. They whispered stories of realms hidden behind the veil of the visible, places where gods, spirits, and ancestors walked. To them, reality was never a single, solid thing. It was layered, multidimensional, full of thresholds. And in their myths, they left us maps of universes unseen. In Hindu cosmology, reality unfolds as an endless hierarchy of lokas, or worlds. There are heavens where radiant beings dwell, and hells where suffering unfolds. But there are also subtle realms between, planes of thought, energy, and spirit. The Upanishads speak of the self traveling through these worlds after death, guided by karma, caught in cycles of birth and rebirth. What strikes us today is not just the poetry of these visions, but their structure. Hindu texts describe reality as nested, like worlds within worlds, echoing the modern language of multiverses and dimensions. Were these metaphors of morality, or ancient intuitions of a cosmos vaster than the visible? In Tibetan tradition, the bardas are states of consciousness that unfold between life and death. Here, the soul encounters visions shaped by its own mind, some terrifying, some luminous. The bardas are not merely afterlife realms but thresholds of perception, gateways through which awareness moves. Tibetan mystics describe these states with astonishing detail: landscapes of light, voices of deities, illusions dissolving into pure awareness. Neuroscience today maps similar experiences in near-death states and altered consciousness. The parallels raise a haunting question. Were these ancient teachings symbolic psychology, or were they describing inner universes that modern science is only now beginning to validate? The Greeks, too, spoke of worlds beyond the senses. Plato imagined a world of forms, timeless, perfect realities that cast shadows into our imperfect material world. For him, what we see is but a flickering image, like shadows on a cave wall, while the true realities exist elsewhere, pure and unchanging. In many ways, this mirrors the tension in modern physics between the world we measure and the mathematical structures that may underlie it. Plato's forms may not have been planets or dimensions, but they echo the intuition that reality extends far beyond appearances. Myths across cultures tell similar stories. In Norse cosmology, Yggdrasil, the world tree, connects 9 realms: Asgard of the gods, Midgard of humans, Niflheim of ice and shadows. In Mesoamerican traditions, the Aztecs described layered heavens and underworlds, each with its own rules, inhabitants, and trials. In Aboriginal Australian cosmology, the dreamtime is not past or future but an ever-present layer of reality, accessible through ritual and vision. These traditions span continents and millennia, yet they converge on a striking theme: that reality is plural and consciousness can travel across its layers. Skeptics see these myths as cultural artifacts, stories created to explain the unknown, to comfort against death, to encode social values. And surely they served those purposes. Yet, their persistence across time and geography hints at something deeper. Why do cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, so often imagine layered realities, hidden realms, and journeys of consciousness beyond the ordinary? Could it be that human experience itself, through dreams, visions, and altered states, has always pointed toward multiplicity? Consider this: before physics described superposition or Everett spoke of branching worlds, shamans described journeys into spirit realms where multiple realities coexist. Before neuroscience mapped the default mode network, mystics spoke of the mind traveling through infinite landscapes. Myth may not be literal physics, but it may be phenomenological, describing how consciousness encounters multiplicity from the inside. This brings us to a powerful contrast. Were these myths only metaphors, poetic ways of making sense of inner experience? Or were they glimpses, through altered states and intuition, into truths that modern science is only now formulating with equations? When Hindu seers spoke of lokas, were they moral allegories? Or were they perceiving layers of reality we have yet to measure? When Tibetan monks described bardas, were they crafting symbolic maps of death? Or reporting actual explorations of states of consciousness beyond the body? When Plato envisioned the world of forms, was he constructing philosophy or intuiting the mathematical fabric underlying the universe? To dismiss myth as primitive is to underestimate human imagination. To accept it literally is to risk fantasy. But between these extremes lies a fertile possibility: that myth was humanity's earliest science, a way of mapping hidden layers of experience and reality before we had microscopes or telescopes. Just as ancient astronomers saw patterns in the stars that later proved real, so too might myth carry fragments of insight, distorted, poetic, but not without truth. There is something profoundly cinematic in this continuity. Picture it: a Hindu sage chanting of worlds beyond the visible, a Tibetan monk guiding the dying through bardas, a Greek philosopher sketching shadows and forms, a Norse storyteller invoking the branches of Yggdrasil. Across centuries, across languages, the human voice tells the same story. Reality is not one, but many. The universes of myth may not match the universes of physics, but both arise from the same human impulse: the refusal to believe that what we see is all that is. And here lies the bridge. When we read myths of parallel realms today, we can see them through two lenses. Through the skeptic's lens, they are metaphors, psychological projections dressed in cosmic imagery. Through the seeker's lens, they are whispers of truths that science has not yet learned how to measure. Either way, they remind us of something crucial: that the human mind has always been drawn toward multiplicity, toward the possibility that consciousness and cosmos are more layered than appearances suggest. Modern science and ancient myth thus form a dialogue across time. Physics speaks of hidden dimensions. Myth speaks of hidden worlds. Neuroscience speaks of simulated realities in the brain. Myth speaks of dreams as other realms. Philosophy speaks of mathematical structures beneath the visible. Myth speaks of eternal forms. In each case, the language differs, but the intuition rhymes. As we stand at the crossroads of myth and science, the question becomes not whether ancient cosmologies were literally true, but whether they were pointing in the right direction. Perhaps they were maps drawn in metaphor, guiding us toward mysteries that physics now approaches from another angle. Perhaps in the dreamtime, in the bardas, in the lokas, in the forms, our ancestors touched the edge of truths we are only beginning to rediscover. And so, the story continues. For if ancient myths intuited parallel realms, and modern science begins to suspect them, what happens when we bring the two together? Could the next frontier of understanding emerge not from discarding myth but from listening to it anew, interpreting its imagery through the lens of physics and neuroscience? Perhaps the myths were not wrong but premature. poetic sketches awaiting scientific detail. From this vantage point, we are ready to move forward. For the myths of parallel realms do not remain in the past. They echo in today's science fiction, in modern spirituality, and even in the cutting-edge theories of physics. The human longing for hidden worlds continues, dressed in new language but carrying the same awe. And with that, we turn now to the modern horizon, where cosmology and quantum theory propose their own myths, their own visions of parallel universes. If the ancients dreamed of hidden worlds through story, perhaps physicists are dreaming of them now through mathematics. And between those two dreams lies the possibility that reality is stranger, vaster, and more layered than either side could imagine alone. Time is the great river in which we all swim, yet no two perspectives on its current are the same. Physics tells us that time is woven into the fabric of space-time, not flowing at all, but existing as a dimension where past, present, and future are equally real. Consciousness, however, whispers a different story. That time rushes forward, carrying us from what was toward what will be, leaving only memory in its wake. Between these two visions lies one of the deepest mysteries of existence, whether we are moving through time or whether time simply is, and we are the ones who move. Modern physics paints a picture of the block universe. In this view, the past does not vanish, nor does the future wait to be born. Instead, every moment exists eternally, laid out in a four-dimensional block. Imagine your life as a film strip, each frame already recorded, from your first breath to your last. You experience the frames one by one, but the reel itself is complete. From this perspective, alternate versions of you, past and future selves, are as real as the present one. The child you were, the elder you will become, all coexist in the fabric of space-time. Yet consciousness resists this vision. We do not feel ourselves stretched across time like a reel of film. We feel ourselves here now at a moving edge. We carry memory of what has been and imagination of what may come. But only this present moment feels alive. Why? Perhaps because consciousness is not the block, but the beam of light that scans across it, animating each frame into living experience. Memory is central to this experience. It is the thread that connects our past selves into a continuous I. Yet memory is far from perfect. It is malleable, reconstructed each time we recall it. Neuroscience shows that memories are not stored like photographs but like living documents, rewritten with each retelling. This means that the self we remember may not be the self that was. Already, we are living in branching identities, versions of ourselves that diverge as memory reshapes them. Imagination extends this branching forward. Every time we picture a possible future, we simulate a version of ourselves who has already lived it. We imagine ourselves succeeding, failing, turning left, turning right. These imagined selves are not idle. They influence our choices, they shape our emotions, they alter our present. In a real sense, we are haunted not only by who we were but by who we might become. From one perspective, these are mental fictions, no more real than the characters in a story. But from another, they are alternate selves inhabiting parallel streams of consciousness. If the block universe is true, then those possible futures are already there, waiting, just as real as the present. Your imagination may not be creating them, it may be glimpsing them. This introduces a profound question. Are your alternate choices lived out somewhere, by another you? Every yes and no, every fork in the road, spawning not only physical universes, as in the many worlds interpretation, but psychological universes, branching within your own consciousness. Perhaps each of us is not a single self but a multiverse of selves, overlapping, diverging, and converging across time. Philosophy has long wrestled with identity over time. The ancient Greeks asked whether you are the same person today as you were yesterday, given that your body's atoms are in constant flux. Locke defined personal identity as continuity of consciousness, memory linking the chain. But if memory is unreliable, then identity itself becomes fragile. Are you the same person who made a choice 10 years ago? Or are you a new self, connected by threads of memory but distinct in being? Modern cognitive science intensifies this uncertainty. Experiments with split-brain patients, individuals whose brain hemispheres no longer communicate, show that each hemisphere can generate its own sense of self, sometimes with conflicting desires. In one case, a patient's left hand attempted to button a shirt while the right hand tried to unbutton it. If identity can fracture within a single skull, how stable is the idea of one continuous I? Perhaps the self is less a singular entity and more a chorus of possibilities, negotiated moment by moment. Time perception adds another layer. Neuroscience suggests that our sense of the present is not instantaneous but constructed in windows of a few seconds. Our brains gather input, stitch it together, and present it as now. This means that our experience of moving through time is itself a simulation, a best guess created by neural machinery. If time does not flow but our brains simulate its flow, then the continuity of self across time may be a story we tell ourselves, not an absolute truth. And yet, stories have power. The narrative self, woven from memory, imagination, and perception of time, anchors us in the world. Without it, we dissolve into fragments. But what if the narrative is not singular? What if we are telling many stories at once, across parallel timelines of consciousness? Perhaps the self you are aware of is only the one at the surface, while countless other selves, lived in other choices, other times, flow beneath like hidden rivers. This is where science meets speculation. Block universe physics suggests that all versions of you already exist eternally. Neuroscience shows that memory and imagination create multiple versions of you within. Together, they paint a picture of identity as multiversal. You are not a singular being traveling through time but a network of selves distributed across it. Skeptics will argue that this is metaphorical, that alternate selves are mental constructs, not realities. But consider, if consciousness is the medium through which reality is experienced, then the difference between real and imagined selves may not be absolute. Both are experienced. Both shape your world. Both carry weight in the unfolding of your life. If so, then the boundary between real and imagined, between this self and another, is porous. This view transforms how we see choice. Every decision feels like a narrowing, a collapse into one path. But if alternate selves live in parallel streams, then choice is not destruction but branching. You are not choosing one life over another. You are creating new lives with every decision, each lived by another version of you. The burden of choice lightens, but the mystery deepens. For who, then, are you? The one who chose? Or the one who remembers choosing? Or all of them at once? The metaphors multiply. Time as a river branching into deltas. The self as a tree, each branch a life. Consciousness as a hall of mirrors, reflecting infinite variations. These images are not just poetic. They capture the strangeness of what physics, neuroscience, and philosophy together suggest. That identity is not fixed, not singular, but a multiverse within. Consider déjà vu, the eerie feeling of having lived a moment before. Neuroscience explains it as a glitch in memory circuits. But what if it is more than a glitch? What if it is a brief crossing of parallel selves, an overlap between timelines of identity? Or dreams, where you are yourself yet not yourself, living in worlds that dissolve on waking? Are these not rehearsals of alternate lives? Or moments when you imagine who you might have been, and the feeling is so strong it aches? Are these not echoes of other yous? Such questions blur the line between science and mysticism. Physics tells us that all times exist. Neuroscience shows us that many selves can be simulated. Mysticism tells us that the self is an illusion, that we are infinite awareness exploring infinite forms. Perhaps these are not contradictions but harmonies, different languages for the same truth. In this light, consciousness itself becomes a multiverse, and identity a constellation rather than a point. You are not one but many, not bound to a single timeline, but branching, flowing, infinite in possibility. The self you experience now is only one star in that constellation, shining briefly but connected to countless others. And so we arrive at a haunting possibility. Your alternate choices are not lost. They are lived somewhere by you. Your alternate selves are not strangers but kin, echoes across time and consciousness. And the story of who you are is not linear but multiversal. From here, our journey must turn outward again, from the inner multiverse of selves to the cosmic multiverse of space and time. For if parallel selves exist within and parallel worlds exist without, then perhaps the two are reflections of one another. Perhaps identity itself is the bridge between consciousness and cosmos. What if everything you see, feel, and believe is not the bedrock of reality but a carefully rendered illusion? What if the stars above, the ground beneath your feet, even the self you call I, are all components of an unfathomably advanced program? This is the unsettling question behind the simulation hypothesis, the idea that our universe may not be the ultimate reality, but a constructed one. Like a Russian doll, each layer of perception may conceal another, deeper layer beneath. Nick Bostrom, philosopher at Oxford, famously framed this as a trilemma. Either civilizations never reach the level of technology capable of simulating universes, or if they do, they choose not to run such simulations, or, if both hurdles are passed, then the number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber base reality. If so, the odds are overwhelming that we are not the original but one of countless simulations. At first, this sounds like science fiction, a digital mythology for the computer age. Yet its roots extend into philosophy far older than modern machines. Plato's allegory of the cave described humans mistaking shadows on the wall for reality itself. Hindu cosmology spoke of Maya, the grand illusion in which consciousness is veiled. Buddhist thought warned of samsara, a wheel of appearances mistaken for ultimate truth. The simulation hypothesis is a 21st century mask for an ancient intuition, that reality may not be what it seems. But today, the metaphor is literal. Our own technologies are inching toward realities indistinguishable from the real. Virtual reality already immerses users in environments that trick the senses. Neural interfaces promise to one day blur the line between digital and physical entirely. In laboratories, brain-computer links allow monkeys to control robotic arms with thought. If such leaps are possible within decades, what might be possible in millennia? Could civilizations millions of years ahead weave universes so detailed, so coherent, that their inhabitants, like us, never realize the truth? Skeptics argue that the hypothesis is unfalsifiable, a thought experiment rather than a testable theory. Yet the sheer plausibility unsettles. The universe behaves suspiciously like a computational system. Physics at the smallest scales reveals information as the currency of reality. Bits encoded in quantum states, processed through the rules of natural law. Some physicists even describe the cosmos not as matter, but as information playing out like a vast algorithm. If matter is information, then to call the universe a simulation is less radical than it appears. Still, doubt lingers. If we are simulated, where are the seams? Shouldn't glitches reveal themselves? Some point to quantum indeterminacy, the strange limits of measurement, as possible evidence. Others speculate about the cosmic speed limit, light's velocity, as a computational constraint, like the refresh rate of a universal screen. And the cosmic background radiation, evenly distributed across the sky, has been interpreted by some as the signature of pixelation, as if the universe were rendered on a grid. These clues remain speculative, but the suspicion endures. The code is hidden in plain sight. Yet even if true, what does it mean for us? Are we prisoners in a cosmic game, puppets of some higher programmer? Or are we participants in a grand design, explorers within a simulated cosmos that is no less meaningful for being artificial? After all, does the reality of your experience depend on whether it is generated by atoms or by code? If you feel love, awe, fear, joy, are these not real regardless of the substrate? Here the contrast sharpens. Science views consciousness as an emergent phenomenon inside a physical or simulated universe. But mysticism flips the script. Consciousness is not inside the simulation. Consciousness generates the simulation. From this angle, the brain is not a machine trapped in code but a lens through which awareness experiences itself, layer after layer. Reality becomes a holographic mirror, each reflection containing the whole. Consider nested realities, the idea that simulations can generate simulations within themselves. Already, video games host entire simulated worlds where players create secondary layers of virtual reality. If our universe is simulated, then what prevents us from simulating others within it? And what if those worlds, too, achieve consciousness, creating their own worlds in turn? The chain could stretch infinitely, a hall of mirrors reflecting mirrors. In such a cosmos, the question, what is base reality, may be meaningless. The imagery is dizzying. Picture yourself standing before a series of mirrors facing one another, your reflection repeating endlessly, shrinking into infinity. Or imagine a hologram, where each fragment contains the image of the whole. Nested realities may operate like this, each universe a shard, complete yet part of something greater. Consciousness could be the thread stitching them together, flowing across layers like light through glass. But is there an escape from such recursion? Could we ever reach the outermost layer? Or would each step only reveal another simulation beyond? Some theorists argue that if nested realities exist, base reality may be forever beyond reach, hidden by the very structure of existence. Others suggest that the search itself is misguided, for perhaps every layer is real in its own domain. To dismiss simulated worlds as unreal ignores that their inhabitants, if conscious, would find their worlds as authentic as ours. This raises a profound paradox. If we are simulated beings, yet we generate our own inner universes, dreams, imaginations, visions, then we are both contained and creators. Simulations within simulations, realities within realities. Our consciousness may be the nesting doll that continues indefinitely, neither fully trapped nor fully free. And what is the meaning? Some fear that the simulation hypothesis drains the world of value, reducing life to a program. But others find the opposite, that being part of a grand design, however artificial, gives life purpose. If a higher intelligence created this world, then existence is not accidental but authored. Our struggles, our joys, may be part of a narrative woven for reasons beyond our comprehension. Philosophically, the idea unsettles the boundaries of real and unreal. If your entire life is simulated, is it any less your life? If love is coded, does it lose its warmth? The answer may be no. For what matters is not the substrate of reality but the experience of it. Pain hurts. Joy uplifts. Meaning arises not from the ultimate layer of existence, but from the way consciousness inhabits each layer it encounters. And so the question deepens. Are we conscious beings exploring an external cosmos, or simulated beings generating internal multiverses within simulations? Perhaps both. Perhaps the distinction itself is false. For whether atoms or code, whether base reality or nested reality, consciousness experiences, and that experience is reality to us. The simulation hypothesis is not a conclusion but a mirror. It reflects our ancient doubt that reality may be an illusion, and our modern hubris that we can build worlds of our own. It collapses science and philosophy into a single riddle. Is the cosmos the ultimate simulation, or is consciousness the ultimate simulator? The Russian doll closes, yet within it lies another. Each layer we uncover leads not to certainty but to deeper wonder. If we are simulated, we are still alive. If we are creators, we are still contained. The truth may be endless recursion, a universe that is both machine and dream. And so we are left suspended between awe and unease. The possibility that we are coded beings does not diminish us. It magnifies the mystery. For if we are inside a simulation, then the very act of asking proves that consciousness transcends its boundaries. The code may constrain the world, but it cannot constrain the question. And that question now points us toward a new frontier. If reality itself is nested, what role does the observer play in shaping not just one universe, but all universes within? What if consciousness is not a spark that flickers briefly in fragile human brains, but the very ground of reality itself? What if mind does not emerge from matter, but matter emerges from mind? This inversion, the bold suggestion that consciousness pervades the cosmos, has haunted philosophers and mystics for millennia. And now, with the rise of new theories at the edge of neuroscience and physics, it is beginning to echo in the halls of science. At the heart of this vision lies panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is not exclusive to humans, nor even to animals, but is a fundamental feature of existence. In this view, every particle, every atom, every star carries some glimmer of experience, however faint. Not thought, not intention, but raw awareness, the light behind existence itself. To skeptics, it sounds fantastical, even absurd, but panpsychists argue that it solves a problem science has yet to crack. How consciousness arises from matter. If the mind is built into the fabric of reality from the start, there is no mystery of emergence. Instead, complexity refines and integrates consciousness until in beings like us, the universe becomes aware of itself. Here, modern science enters the conversation. Integrated Information Theory, or IIT, is one of today's leading attempts to measure consciousness. It proposes that consciousness corresponds to the amount of information integrated by a system, how deeply its parts interconnect to form a unified whole. By this measure, a human brain has a vast degree of integrated information, giving rise to rich subjective experience. But so too, in principle, might be simpler systems, a bee colony, a silicon chip, perhaps even a single atom in some rudimentary sense. The theory does not prove panpsychism, but it resonates with it, blurring the line between the animate and inanimate. Physicists, too, have begun to notice patterns that seem to rhyme with this cosmic vision. Quantum fields, the invisible structures that pervade space-time, are not localized objects but continuous entities, vibrating with potential. Everything we see, every particle that flickers into existence, arises from these universal fields. They are omnipresent, unbroken, the silent stage on which the drama of matter plays out. Could these fields be the physical counterpart to what mystics have long called universal consciousness? Could awareness itself be the invisible ocean from which individual minds emerge like waves? Mystical traditions certainly thought so. Hindu philosophy spoke of Brahman, the infinite consciousness from which all worlds arise. In Buddhist thought, the ground of being is a luminous awareness in which forms appear and dissolve. Sufi mystics called it the beloved, Christian mystics the divine mind. Again and again, across cultures, we find the intuition that our individual consciousness is a fragment of something vaster, a cosmic mind dreaming itself into countless forms. The contrast between science and mysticism is striking. Science, cautious and precise, seeks models, measurements, equations. Mysticism, bold and poetic, declares the cosmos alive with spirit. One speaks the language of data, the other of revelation. Yet they converge in wonder, both reaching toward the same ineffable question. What is the relationship between mind and universe? Consider the metaphor of the hologram. In a holographic plate, each fragment contains the whole image, albeit at lower resolution. Likewise, perhaps each individual mind is a fragment of the cosmic whole, containing within it the essence of universal awareness. Your consciousness, then, would not be separate but continuous with all consciousness, a localized perspective through which the cosmic mind perceives itself. Skeptics warn against romanticizing. They remind us that no experiment yet proves panpsychism or a cosmic mind. IT is a framework, not a revelation. Quantum fields, while universal, obey precise mathematics that need not imply awareness. To leap from physics to mysticism risks collapsing hard-won rigor into speculation. But the mystery of consciousness remains unsolved, and the boldness of these ideas keeps the dialogue alive. Think of it this way. The brain does not generate electricity, it channels it. The radio does not create music, it receives it. Perhaps consciousness, too, is not manufactured by the brain but mediated through it, like a lens focusing the light of a universal mind. Destroy the lens, and the image disappears, but the light itself persists. If this is true, then individuality is not an island but a perspective. Each of us would be a node in an infinite web of awareness, like stars scattered across a night sky, each shining with its own brilliance yet all part of the same galaxy. To know oneself would be, in some measure, to know the cosmos. And here, physics itself offers a poetic parallel. Quantum entanglement reveals that particles can remain linked across vast distances, their states correlated as if space itself were secondary. Perhaps minds, too, are entangled in a deeper layer of reality. The separateness we feel may be a useful illusion, while beneath it lies a seamless field of shared awareness. Mystics have long described such states. In moments of deep meditation or mystical vision, Individuals report a dissolution of self, a merging with something infinite. They describe it as more real than waking life, a clarity that transcends words. Science interprets this as altered brain states, shifts in neural firing. Mysticism interprets it as glimpses of the cosmic mind. Both may be true, biology as mechanism, experience as revelation. So we arrive at a crescendo of cosmic wonder. Are we fragments of a vast intelligence, each consciousness a thread in the tapestry of a universal mind? Is the universe itself aware, dreaming stars and galaxies as vividly as we dream our own inner worlds? Or are we simply projecting our own awareness outward, painting the cosmos with the colors of mind? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing one or the other but in holding both. Science grounds us, insisting on evidence, on humility before the unknown. Mysticism inspires us, daring us to see the universe as alive with meaning. Between them, a new vision emerges. Consciousness and cosmos as reflections of one another, two sides of the same infinite mirror. The cosmic mind is not a conclusion but an invitation, a call to see ourselves not as isolated sparks but as part of the great fire of awareness that illuminates existence. Whether through equations or through poetry, through meditation or through experiment, the search leads to the same horizon. The possibility that reality itself is conscious, and that in living, in perceiving, we are the universe knowing itself. And so the question deepens once more. If the cosmos is mind, then what role do we play within it? Are we fleeting thoughts in its dream, or co-creators shaping its unfolding? To answer, we must journey further into the paradox of free will, destiny, and the role of consciousness in shaping the flow of the universe itself. For all the wonders stirred by talk of parallel universes, cosmic consciousness, and simulated realities, a sobering voice interrupts. What if we are simply fooling ourselves? What if the mysteries we celebrate are less about hidden truths of the cosmos and more about the human tendency to weave meaning into uncertainty? Every grand theory must face its skeptic, and here, the counterarguments stand like a mirror, asking us to confront our deepest longing for mystery. Neuroscience provides the first critique. According to reductionists, consciousness is not a cosmic principle but an emergent byproduct of biological machinery. Billions of neurons fire, exchanging chemicals, creating patterns of activity. Out of this complexity arises the phenomenon we call awareness. Nothing mystical, nothing beyond the skull, just matter organized into patterns. Dreams, visions, and mystical states are, in this view, no more than misfiring circuits or altered brain chemistry. The brain generates worlds, yes, but they are illusions confined to our heads, not portals to parallel realms. Quantum mechanics, too, offers a sobering interpretation. While some claim the observer is essential for wave functions to collapse, many physicists insist otherwise. The phenomenon of decoherence explains how superpositions resolve without the need for consciousness at all. Interaction with the environment, the scattering of photons, the entanglement of particles, suffices to yield the definite outcomes we see. The universe does not wait for our gaze to decide. It evolves according to its own physical laws. Consciousness, then, is not the magician behind quantum reality, but another phenomenon within it. Anthropocentrism is another danger. For centuries, humanity imagined itself at the center of creation. The earth unmoving, the cosmos revolving around us. Science shattered that illusion. Now, to insist that consciousness, our consciousness, sits at the center of the multiverse risks repeating the same mistake. Just as the Earth is one planet among billions, so too may human awareness be a local accident in a vast indifferent cosmos. To inflate it into a cosmic principle may be not insight but ego. And then there is the question of evidence. For all the beauty of mystical parallels, where is the data? Panpsychism sounds profound, but it struggles to produce testable predictions. The simulation hypothesis provokes fascination, but it remains unfalsifiable, forever beyond proof or disproof. Claims that psychedelic visions reveal hidden dimensions are moving, but subjective. Science demands more measurable, repeatable, falsifiable results. Without them, speculation risks dissolving into story. This is where hype meets hard evidence. Our brains are wired to find patterns, even where none exist. We invent connections, see faces in clouds, constellations in random stars. The leap from quantum strangeness to cosmic mind may be just another projection of this tendency, painting mystery with the colors of our imagination. Skeptics remind us, too, of the danger of mystery itself. Awe can intoxicate, leading us to accept what resonates emotionally rather than what stands under scrutiny. It is tempting to believe we are fragments of a cosmic mind or voyagers through inner universes. But do we believe because it is true, or because it comforts us, because it lifts us above the weight of insignificance? The critic's voice insists. The burden of proof remains. Without it, the boundary between wonder and wishful thinking blurs. And perhaps that is the true challenge of these ideas. Not that they are false, but that they may be unfalsifiable, forever beyond the reach of experiment. In such cases, belief becomes less about evidence and more about temperament, about whether we prefer the cold clarity of skepticism or the warmth of possibility. Yet even here, the tension is not sterile. For if skepticism strips away illusion, it also sharpens wonder. To stand before the unknown and admit ignorance is itself profound. The skeptic's question is not meant to silence mystery, but to protect it from collapse into fantasy. By demanding evidence, skepticism keeps the horizon honest, ensuring that our search for meaning remains tethered to reality, however strange that reality may be. So we pause here, sobered. Perhaps consciousness is only neurons, parallel worlds only metaphors, simulations only science fiction. Perhaps we long for mystery more than we uncover it. And yet, the longing itself is undeniable, woven into us as deeply as reason. The skeptic challenges, but the mystery endures. And from this sobering silence, we now turn to the next frontier. If skepticism grounds us, what remains when we ask, not only what consciousness is, but what role it plays? Can the observer truly influence the unfolding of reality, or is that, too, another illusion? For all the wonders stirred by talk of parallel universes, cosmic consciousness, and simulated realities, a sobering voice interrupts. What if we are simply fooling ourselves? What if the mysteries we celebrate are less about hidden truths of the cosmos and more about the human tendency to weave meaning into uncertainty? Every grand theory must face its skeptic, and here, the counterarguments stand like a mirror, asking us to confront our deepest longing for mystery. Neuroscience provides the first critique. According to reductionists, consciousness is not a cosmic principle but an emergent byproduct of biological machinery. Billions of neurons fire, exchanging chemicals, creating patterns of activity. Out of this complexity arises the phenomenon we call awareness. Nothing mystical, nothing beyond the skull, just matter organized into patterns. Dreams, visions, and mystical states are, in this view, no more than misfiring circuits or altered brain chemistry. The brain generates worlds, yes, but they are illusions confined to our heads, not portals to parallel realms. Modern neuroscience goes further with models like predictive processing. According to this theory, the brain is not a mirror of reality but a prediction engine, constantly generating expectations and correcting them against sensory input. What we perceive is not the world itself, but our brain's best guess. While this explains illusions, dreams, and hallucinations with elegant precision, it leaves little room for mystical speculation. The universes within us, skeptics argue, are not glimpses of cosmic truth but the inevitable byproducts of a system designed to predict survival-relevant outcomes. Quantum mechanics, too, offers a sobering interpretation. While some claim the observer is essential for wave functions to collapse, many physicists insist otherwise. The phenomenon of decoherence explains how superpositions resolve without the need for consciousness at all. Interaction with the environment, the scattering of photons, the entanglement of particles, suffices to yield the definite outcomes we see. The universe does not wait for our gaze to decide. It evolves according to its own physical laws. Consciousness, then, is not the magician behind quantum reality, but another phenomenon within it. Alternative interpretations reinforce this caution. The many worlds interpretation sidesteps the observer entirely by proposing that all outcomes occur in branching universes, regardless of who is watching. Objective collapse models, on the other hand, suggest that quantum superpositions fail under certain conditions with no reference to mind. In both cases, consciousness is sidelined. For skeptics, the claim that the mind creates reality is an overreach, a misreading of physics born more from our fascination with mystery than from the equations themselves. Anthropocentrism is another danger. For centuries, humanity imagined itself at the center of creation. The earth unmoving, the cosmos revolving around us. Science shattered that illusion. Copernicus displaced us from the center of the solar system. Darwin revealed our kinship with all life. Astronomy showed that our galaxy is one among billions. Now, to insist that consciousness, our consciousness, sits at the center of the multiverse risks repeating the same mistake. Just as the Earth is one planet among countless, so too may human awareness be a local accident in a vast indifferent cosmos. To inflate it into a cosmic principle may be not insight but ego. Philosophy provides yet another critique. Theories of cosmic consciousness, nested simulations, or mystical parallel universes often suffer from a lack of falsifiability. Karl Popper, the philosopher of science, argued that for a claim to be scientific, it must be possible to disprove it through experiment. Panpsychism, for example, is elegant but struggles to make predictions we can test. The simulation hypothesis provokes fascination, but if no test can distinguish between base reality and simulated reality, then the theory cannot be verified or falsified. Without such criteria, skeptics warn, these ideas risk drifting into metaphysics or worse, into comforting stories we mistake for truth. This is where hype meets hard evidence. Our brains are wired to find patterns, even where none exist. We invent connections, see faces in clouds, constellations in random stars. The leap from quantum strangeness to cosmic mind may be just another projection of this tendency, painting mystery with the colors of our imagination. We long for hidden realms, for secret meanings, for significance beyond the cold machinery of physics. The danger is not curiosity itself, but mistaking wonder for evidence. And there is another sobering point. Human cognition itself may not be equipped to grasp ultimate reality. Just as a bat cannot comprehend color or a bee cannot fathom mathematics, our brains, shaped by evolution to survive on the savannah, may not be capable of understanding the deepest layers of existence. The stories we tell about multiverses, cosmic minds, and simulations may reveal less about the universe and more about the architecture of our own limitations. Yet even here, the skeptic's role is not to extinguish awe but to refine it. For if skepticism strips away illusion, it also sharpens wonder. To stand before the unknown and admit ignorance is itself profound. Richard Feynman once said, "I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned." In this spirit, skepticism does not kill mystery but preserves it, preventing our longing from hardening into dogma. So we pause here, sobered. Perhaps consciousness is only neurons, parallel worlds only metaphors, simulations only science fiction. Perhaps we long for mystery more than we uncover it. And yet, the longing itself is undeniable, woven into us as deeply as reason. The skeptic challenges, but the mystery endures. And from this sobering silence, we now turn to the next frontier. If skepticism grounds us, what remains when we ask, not only what consciousness is, but what role it plays? Can the observer truly influence the unfolding of reality, or is that, too, another illusion? Imagine a future where the boundaries of mind and universe dissolve, not as metaphor, but as lived experience. A future where the maps of consciousness are drawn with the same precision as star charts, and where the multiverse is not only a concept of physics but an arena of exploration. If the brain generates inner worlds, if consciousness is entangled with the fabric of reality, then what happens when technology gives us the keys to open those doors? The seeds are already here. Brain-computer interfaces promise to link neural activity directly to digital systems. Early prototypes allow paralyzed patients to move robotic limbs with thought alone. In laboratories, researchers translate brainwaves into images, reconstructing what someone is looking at by decoding patterns of neural firing. These are crude beginnings, yet they foreshadow something extraordinary. the possibility of mapping the landscapes of the mind. What if dreams could be recorded? What if hallucinations could be shared? What if the hidden universes of each consciousness could be projected outward, made visible, navigable, even interconnected? The technology of tomorrow may not stop at reading the brain but extend to rewriting it. Neurostimulation already alters mood, perception, and cognition. Psychedelic research, once dismissed, is revealing how chemical keys unlock neural pathways of extraordinary scope. Combine this with machine learning and quantum computation, and we approach a horizon where consciousness itself becomes programmable. The mind ceases to be a private theater and becomes a platform, a multiverse of experiences we can design, remix, and inhabit. But here arises the central tension. What kind of future does this unlock? In the utopian vision, humanity becomes cartographers of the inner cosmos. Imagine a civilization where meditation, psychedelics, and brain-machine interfaces converge into tools of exploration. We could journey into dream worlds as stable as waking life, share inner universes with others as easily as we share music, and construct entirely new modes of being. Consciousness itself becomes an art form, a medium of creation richer than paint, sound, or film. In this future, the old divisions of philosophy and physics begin to blur. To explore consciousness becomes to explore reality itself, as inner and outer worlds interweave. Quantum computers might not just calculate numbers but simulate entire minds, allowing us to interact with alternate versions of ourselves. The many worlds interpretation of physics could merge with the many worlds of identity, making parallel selves tangible, accessible, conversable. Instead of speculating about lives not lived, we might meet those other selves directly. Such a future offers visions of unity as well. If consciousness is truly a field, a cosmic fabric in which individual minds are threads, then technology might one day weave those threads together. Imagine a global consciousness network, where boundaries between self and other dissolve, and empathy is no longer imagined but experienced directly. Conflicts might fade, not through diplomacy but through shared awareness. Humanity could awaken as a planetary mind, a single intelligence dreaming multiverses within itself. Yet every utopia casts a shadow, for the same technologies that could liberate consciousness could also enslave it. If dreams can be recorded, they can be manipulated. If inner worlds can be shared, they can be surveilled. A future of open consciousness could easily slide into a dystopia of control, where governments or corporations harvest not only our data but our very thoughts. Privacy, once about possessions or communications, would extend into the sanctum of the mind, and risk disappearing altogether. Even without malice, the risks are staggering. If alternate selves can be simulated, how do we distinguish the real from the artificial? If entire universes can be engineered, how do we anchor to any shared reality? The danger is fragmentation. Humanity splintering into countless subjective worlds, each compelling, each seductive, yet each isolating. Where today we worry about echo chambers of information, tomorrow we may face echo chambers of existence itself. And then there is the risk of loss, not of privacy but of meaning. If every possible world can be generated, does any world matter? If consciousness can become anything, does it anchor to nothing? The paradox of infinite choice is paralysis. The paradox of infinite worlds is nihilism. A future of boundless universes may offer freedom but also dissolve significance. Skeptics warn, too, of hubris, the assumption that humanity can master consciousness as it mastered fire or electricity may itself be folly. Consciousness may be less a system to control and more a mystery to participate in, an ocean we cannot drain or map in full. Our attempts to engineer the multiverse of mind may yield not godhood but confusion, unleashing forces we cannot understand. Like sorcerers' apprentices, we may summon powers that overwhelm us. And yet, the allure persists. Throughout history, humanity has gazed upward at the stars and inward at the soul, seeking maps to the infinite. Now those two quests may converge. As telescopes peer deeper into space and brain scanners probe deeper into the mind, the possibility arises that these are not separate explorations but reflections of one another. The inner multiverse and the outer cosmos may be two sides of the same mirror, and the future may belong to those who dare to step through. Consider the metaphor of Russian dolls, each reality nested within another. Our waking life may be one doll, dreams another, simulations another still. Consciousness may generate inner worlds, yet consciousness itself may be contained within larger realities, themselves contained within larger still. In this fractal hierarchy, the future becomes not a destination but a cascade of unveilings, each revealing that what we thought was ultimate is only a layer. In such a vision, the evolution of humanity is not only biological or technological but ontological. We do not simply grow stronger or smarter, we grow multiversal. Each expansion of consciousness reveals not just more of the universe, but more of ourselves. Identity becomes fluid, time becomes multidimensional, and reality itself becomes participatory. And perhaps this is the deepest speculation, that the conscious multiverse is not ahead of us but already here. Every choice, every dream, every imagined possibility is a thread in its weave. Technology may only make explicit what has always been true, that we are not singular beings moving through a single timeline, but multiversal explorers, forever branching, forever unfolding. The question is not whether this will happen, but how we will live when it does. Will we embrace the awe, crafting worlds of beauty, compassion, and shared wonder? Or will we drown in the multiplicity, losing ourselves in labyrinths of illusion? The speculative horizon is both promise and warning. So we stand here on the edge of the future, looking inward and outward at once. The conscious multiverse beckons, shimmering with possibility, alive with both hope and peril. And as we step into it, we carry with us the oldest question of all. Not just what is real, but who are we within it? To explore the future of consciousness is to explore the future of humanity itself. And perhaps, beyond that, to explore the future of the cosmos. Perhaps the most staggering possibility is that our exploration of inner universes will become indistinguishable from our exploration of the outer cosmos. If consciousness is not merely a passenger but an active principle in reality, then unlocking its depths may be akin to opening new dimensions of physics itself. Technologies that expand the mind might also expand the scope of science, revealing laws and patterns invisible to our current instruments. Where telescopes revealed galaxies and particle colliders revealed quarks, the next frontier may be consciousness itself revealing universes. This raises a daring speculation. What if the fate of the cosmos depends on consciousness? Some physicists suggest the universe's laws are finely balanced, precariously tuned to allow life. If awareness is not an accidental byproduct but a fundamental player, then the act of conscious perception may be part of what keeps the universe coherent. In this view, our future exploration of multiversal consciousness is not indulgence but responsibility. By deepening our awareness, we might in some unfathomable way participate in the stability or evolution of reality itself. But here too lies peril. If we fragment into endless subjective realities, if collective attention disperses into simulations without coherence, could the universe itself unravel? It sounds like myth, like science fiction, and yet it echoes old traditions. Cultures across the world have spoken of human beings as stewards of cosmic balance. From the Hindu notion of dharma to indigenous visions of maintaining harmony between worlds, the theme persists that consciousness is not a private domain but a cosmic duty. The speculative horizon forces us to ask, what kind of stewards will we become? One path envisions a golden age of mind, where inner and outer exploration converge into a unified quest, where technology amplifies empathy, and where humanity evolves into a species that can consciously co-create reality. Another path warns of disintegration, where fractured identities lose touch with shared being, and where infinite inner worlds eclipse the fragile, shared one we depend on. At the heart of this is the paradox of identity. Already, our sense of self is unstable, a shifting constellation of memory, narrative, and perception. With conscious multiverse technologies, that instability could magnify. We might live not one life but many simultaneously, slipping between versions of ourselves with ease. But then, who are we? Are we the sum of all versions or none? Is identity a thread tying realities together, or merely an illusion unraveling into infinite strands. And yet, perhaps this is not a problem but a liberation. If the self is multiversal, then death itself may lose its sting. Each ending could be a transition, each branch another continuation. In such a vision, mortality gives way to multiplicity, and existence becomes a weave of endless selves. The future of conscious multiverses, then, is not simply technological or philosophical, it is existential. It challenges the meaning of reality, the stability of self, and the destiny of the cosmos. It asks us to imagine futures where humanity becomes a chorus of minds resonating across universes, and futures where humanity dissolves into noise, lost in its own creations. As we peer into this horizon, one truth remains. We cannot separate science from story, technology from myth. The conscious multiverse is as much a narrative we tell ourselves as it is a hypothesis we test. And like all great narratives, it has the power to shape the path we walk. Whether we find utopia, dystopia, or something beyond both will depend not only on what is possible, but on what we choose to dream into being. We began with a mirror, a simple reflection, yet a symbol of infinite possibility. As you gaze into it, you see yourself, yet perhaps more than yourself. Perhaps, somewhere beyond the glass, 1,000 other versions of you are peering back, each shaped by choices not made, paths not taken, worlds unseen. Do these parallel selves exist only as thought, or do they flicker somewhere in a multiverse, waiting for consciousness to notice? The question lingers, haunting in its simplicity, and impossible to dismiss. Science offers answers, but never certainty. Neuroscience maps neural activity, decoding the landscapes of perception, yet it cannot measure the subjective reality of experience. Quantum physics reveals a strange, probabilistic universe, where particles may exist in superposition and wave functions collapse in ways that hint at the observer's influence. But the equations remain silent on whether the mind generates reality or merely interprets it. Physics can describe possibilities, but it cannot tell us which worlds, if any, truly exist. Ancient myths whisper answers in a different tongue. Hindu cosmology speaks of multiple lokas, Tibetan traditions describe the bardas, Greek philosophers imagined worlds of forms. Across time, humanity has intuited layers of reality beyond ordinary perception, as if consciousness itself senses dimensions that science only now begins to explore. Were these metaphors for human experience, or precursors to insights we will one day verify? Perhaps they are both, a reminder that our curiosity is eternal, bridging imagination and empirical inquiry. And yet, skepticism remains our anchor. Reductionist neuroscience, decoherence without observers, the risks of anthropocentric assumptions, these temper our flights of speculation. They remind us that awe without discipline can become wishful thinking. The universe does not bend to human desire, and consciousness may be less the architect of reality than a participant constrained by it. This tension between what we wish, what we imagine, and what we know is the heartbeat of inquiry. Still, the mirror calls us to look closer. Each reflection, each branching possibility, asks a deeper question. Is your consciousness merely contained within a multiverse, or does it contain multiverses within itself? Perhaps both are true. Perhaps every act of observation folds reality upon itself, creating ripples across dimensions, a cascade of parallel selves emerging and dissolving like waves on an infinite ocean. Each thought, each choice, may not only define the self but echo outward, shaping worlds in ways we cannot yet perceive. Consider memory and imagination, hallucinatory and dreamlike experiences, and the revelations of psychedelics. Here, we glimpse the multiverse in miniature, universes constructed entirely of perception, yet experienced as vividly as the external world. Neuroscience may call them simulation, yet to the mind inhabiting them, the worlds are as real as sunlight or stone. In these experiences, science and mysticism converge, hinting at possibilities both wondrous and unsettling. That consciousness, in some profound sense, is both creator and explorer of realities. The metaphor of nested mirrors grows richer. Step closer and each reflection contains another, endlessly, a fractal of existence. Your present self reflects past and future selves, yet also potential selves, lives imagined and unimagined. Each layer intersects with the others, overlapping like waves in a boundless sea. To stare deeply is to confront uncertainty. Where does the self end, and where does the multiverse begin? Perhaps there is no boundary. Perhaps the observer and observed are entwined, forever inseparable. Speculative horizons extend beyond individual experience. Technologies that expand consciousness, brain-computer interfaces, neural mapping, quantum computation of minds, may bring these multiversal landscapes into shared view. Humanity could navigate inner universes with intentionality, shaping experience with unprecedented precision. Yet for every utopian vision of connected consciousness and cosmic unity, there exists a shadow, fragmentation, loss of grounding, ethical peril. To hold such power without wisdom could unravel identity, erode empathy, and dissolve meaning. The stakes are as existential as they are personal. Even so, the mirror does not command fear. It invites awe, teaches humility. It reminds us that we are participants in a reality far grander than our intuition can grasp. Each reflection is a possibility, each possibility a question about existence itself. We live in a universe capable of wonder, yet indifferent to our desires. In this tension between what is known and what is imagined, we find the essence of philosophical inquiry, the pulse of physics, and the resonance of consciousness. Look again. Perhaps you are not merely observing parallel worlds. Perhaps you are embedded within them, threading through them, co-creating them. Perhaps the act of paying attention, of reflecting, imagining, and questioning, is itself a bridge, connecting the finite self to infinite potential. Science charts the laws, philosophy wrestles with meaning, and mysticism whispers of unity. None provides the final answer, yet all gesture toward the same horizon. The mind as both lens and universe, the self as both mirror and reflection. And so, as the final reflection shimmers, we are left not with certainty but with possibility. Parallel universes may exist within consciousness, or consciousness may exist within parallel universes. Perhaps both are true, folding upon each other in an endless loop. Perhaps we are forever explorers of worlds both inner and outer, physical and mental, tangible and imagined. Each choice, each act of awareness, becomes a ripple across dimensions, a testament to the strange and wondrous partnership between mind and cosmos. In the end, the mirror stares back, and the question remains unresolved. Do you inhabit your own multiverse, or do the multiverses inhabit you? It is a question without closure, designed not to be solved but to expand perception, to invite contemplation, to awaken awe. Science, speculation, and philosophy converge here, not in answer but in the space between. And in that space, the trembling, radiant, infinite space, we find our proper stance. Humility in the face of the universe, curiosity in the face of mystery, and wonder in the face of our own consciousness. The journey began with a reflection. It ends, for now, with the acknowledgement that every reflection is a portal, every self a universe, and every question a doorway into the infinite.